It's live now, Chair.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session of Budget Scrutiny Commission. We will be discussing our recommendations concerning the draft budget proposals for the year 2025-26. I would like to welcome all members, the public, and the press to this meeting being held in person in Eastham Town Hall, whether they are watching it via YouTube or attended in person. This meeting will be broadcast live. With regards to meeting etiquette, members of the council, please may I ask that you indicate you wish to speak by raising your physical hands, and those viewing remotely by raising your virtual hand. On this point, may I remind everyone to introduce themselves when you're speaking for the first time, for the benefit of the recording and members of the public. The purpose of this evening's session is to consider the draft recommendations by the Budget Scrutiny Commission concerning the London Borough of Newham draft budget proposal for the year 2025-26. This is in accordance with our terms of reference as delegated to this commission by the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. The draft budget proposal were published on the 23rd of December 2024. Scrutiny, including the budget, is part of the system of assurance, providing checks and balance, challenge, and accountability. We are all conscious of the time constraint within which we are operating this year, and I would like to express our sincere thanks to everyone who have taken part in this process. In terms of format, there will be comments from the Budget Scrutiny members this evening. I will take the agenda in the following order: item 1 to 3, 6, 5, and 4. Colleagues, this session of the budget scrutiny is now called to order. Item 1. Is there any apologies? Is there any members wishing to apologize for absence? Councillor Lewis Godfrey. Is there any other members wishing to?
Officers had any apologies?
Pardon?
Just asking officers whether they've received any apologies.
Councillor, I've got none on the chair script.
So is there no apologies? No. Okay. So Lewis Godfrey, and there's no other apology noted here. Declaration of interest. Are there any members?
In regards to B20, I'm currently receiving support from our new money.
Okay, thank you. So you've said that before I finish the statement. Okay, declaration of interest. Are there any members wishing to declare an interest?
Yes, Chair, in relation to adult services, my dad is not here.
Good. Thank you. Any other declaration of interest? No. Minutes. And please, these are the minutes of our last year meeting, budget scrutiny meeting, the one similar to this one. So it's some time back. You've been served with the paper. So, and the papers are before you. So I move minutes of the meeting of the 6th of February 2024 be accepted as the correct record. That agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Colleagues, at this stage in our proceedings, I move that we adjourned into closed session.
Oh, I'm okay.
Thank you. Into closed session for 45 minutes to consider forward some of our budget recommendations. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Chair.
Thank you. We stand adjourned. Really? Good evening once again to everyone, and this is the resumption of the London Borough of Newham Budget Scrutiny Commission. Our meeting is now resumed, and colleagues, may I revisit the item, the declaration item. I wish to declare that I am a landlord within the London Borough of Newham. Can that be noted, please? Is there any other declaration of interest?
I do, same as you, Chair, declaration as a landlord within the London Borough of Newham.
Okay. Thank you. The Budget Scrutiny Commission members have used the draft budget proposal, which was published on the 23rd of December 2024. We intend to share our recommendation in draft form this evening, subject to further refinement in the coming days. Following thematic evidence gathering sessions per place and resource, the Budget Scrutiny Commission members made a number of observations, findings, and recommendations concerning the draft budget proposal for the year 2025-26. Members organized their recommendation broadly by considering the evidence received in the evidence gathering session and as follows. Exceptional financial support, Section 114 notice to budgeting, including financial and electoral cycles, equitable outcomes and service delivery for residents, operational effectiveness, information provided in the budget pro forma, budget consultation, and engagements. I will now move to item 5. Is there any verbal update? Colleagues, at this stage, rather than going into verbal updates on the budgeting, we have quite a number of recommendations to go through. So I would propose we go straight into the recommendation. And the first set of recommendations to be dealt with this evening is the draft strategic and operational recommendation relating to budgeting approach, communication, and engagement. Is that agreed that we do it in that way?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Thank you. So I will do the first aspect of this, and we will take it in turns to do them. And as I go along, you will take my lead, and I will call the relevant members. Is that noted?
Noted.
Okay. So the first part that I will be dealing with is the exceptional financial support. Exceptional financial support from central government represent a concerning intervention that signals severe financial distress within Newham. The increasing reliance on exceptional financial support package across councils indicates fundamental weakness in local government funding structure and raises serious concern about long-term financial sustainability. We note that AFS requests for 50 million to be able to use capital receipt in an interim fix. In the case of Newham, this is something that has continued to concern members of the Budget Scrutiny Commission since 2022, leading in the last year to a special convening of year-round Budget Scrutiny Commission looking at in-year spending. We consider this fiscal year to have been a wasted opportunity to improve Newham financial position. Large-scale discretionary spending has continued. Projects have overspent. Example, Affordable Homes Program, and the transformation savings offered early in the year have not yet been materialized. At the same time, we have also continued to have invest in subsidiary companies and have considered large level of borrowing and have considerably large level of borrowing. Taken together, we remain concerned that even with exceptional financial support being granted, this is an interim measure for a year and does not resolve the issue in the long term. Recommendations that in year scrutiny of the accounts continue with monthly management accounts. We would ask, as per 2023-24 audit recommendations and the LGA peer review, that the management accounts business plan and performance review of subsidiary company owned by the council also be shared on a quarterly basis.
Agreed.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
I now move on to section 2 of this paper, avoiding a section 114 notice, and I call Councillor Lester Hudson to present.
Thank you, Chair. A section 114 notice represents the severe financial crisis that a local authority can face, effectively declaring the council bankrupt under Local Government Finance Act 1988. When issued by a Chief Financial Officer, section 151 officer, this notice indicates that the council cannot achieve a balanced budget and is unable to meet its current or future financial obligations. Once declared, the council enters a period of extreme financial restrictions where only essential spending on statutory services and existing contractual obligations is permitted. All new expenditure must cease immediately, except for safeguarding vulnerable people and providing statutory services. The serving of a section 114 notice triggers immediate intervention from central government and requires the council to meet within 21 days to discuss the situation and to develop an emergency financial strategy. We have noted that the section 151 comments through budget scrutiny process in stating that the precarious nature of the situation and the steps needed to be taken to avoid a section 114 notice. The disposal of properties and the use of EFS, it's secure, does not reduce the funding deficit of the council. We found in our deliberations instances where the mayor and the executive do not want to consider further discretionary cuts. Recommendations: 1. To ensure the financial viability of Newham Council, the mayor and the executive make recommendations for further cuts in discretionary expenditure. To assist where information and data have been provided, we have provided suggestions against individual proposals. Number 2, discretionary expenditure not in the approved budget over £10,000 be approved by full council.
Thank you, Councillor Hudson. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
I now move Councillor Keeling to present strategic approach to budgeting.
The Budget Scrutiny Commission acknowledges the Mayor and Cabinet's approach to framing the budget within the context of building a fairer Newham, which is effectively supported by the publication of several equality impact assessments alongside the draft budget. However, we recommend that the executive considers broader policy implications, particularly in relation to central government's emphasis on early intervention and prevention strategies. In addition, we propose that the council consider its role as a provider and service deliverer and shift more towards an enabler and facilitator of a place and partners. This resonates with the findings of the LGA peer review in recommending strengthening partnerships. We propose that integrating this perspective alongside a comprehensive 3-year medium-term financial strategy and robust demographic modelling would significantly enhance the council's operational effectiveness across electoral cycles, collaborative working with partner organisations, and most importantly, service delivery to Newham residents. This strategic approach would strengthen our long-term financial planning and ensure sustainable service provision for our community. In doing so, we recommend the council devise a mission statement sharing its intent to become an enabler and facilitator of place. And number two, the council adopt a position statement on its shared understanding of early intervention and prevention, and consideration be given to how this is measured and documented as part of the performance review framework.
Thank you, Councillor Keeling. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
I now call on Councillor Rotmini Shaw to present operational effectiveness.
Thank you, Chair. In the last budget consultation meeting we had, the Mayor raised serious concerns about the current governance arrangements, and from that finding, I'm going to read out the findings and then the recommendations. The committee expresses its sincere appreciation to those officers, directors, and cabinet members who have addressed our inquiries with transparency and demonstrated a shared commitment to the borough's advancement. However, we note with concern the Mayor's statements regarding delays in work progression being attributed to officer inaction. This raises significant concerns about the effectiveness of current governance arrangements. To address this matter, we recommend that Mayor's Office provides biannual reports to Overview and Scrutiny Committee regarding the implementation status of strategic initiatives identified within the corporate plan, particularly focusing on matters highlighted by the Mayor as required. This is as distinct from Directorate Service Delivery Performance Indicators, which are currently reviewed by the committee on a quarterly basis. Sharing any concerns around strategic blockages, enhance accountability, aid scrutiny, and ensure appropriate oversight of service delivery against agreed strategic objectives. The structured reporting mechanism would strengthen governance arrangements and provide clear accountability pathways between the executive and officers. The recommendation is that biannual reports be provided to Overview and Scrutiny on blockages and delays in delivery of strategic priorities.
Councillor Shaw, is that agreed?
Agreed.
I now call on Councillor Rita Chaudet to present item 5, improvement in budget pro forma.
I give way, Chair, to Councillor O'Dea.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Dea.
So we would like to recommend that there are some improvements to the budget performance. So we would like to acknowledge that there have been improvements. However, there are some observations that we'd like to highlight. So firstly, on information completeness, we see that some of the pro formas lack sufficient detail, and this means that we're having to make additional queries from the Commission to enable a comprehensive assessment. This has led to us sometimes having to respond to individual pro formas as there's insufficient evidence for us to be able to make a recommendation on the merits of the proposal. Our second point is evidence-based decision-making. The budget documentation will benefit from having more empirical data on service utilisation and outcomes. So, for example, on Debden House, it would be really useful for us to have a reference that only 18% of campsite users in the previous year were Newham residents. Our third point is accessibility and clarity. So we think that in future, the pro forma should have plain English principles so that it's more accessible to residents. We think that where appropriate, there could be included some hyperlinks with supporting data sets and also some more background documentation so that there's more of a context that's provided for residents. Our fourth point is financial transparency. We think that there should be a clear distinction between service reductions and income generation so that this is very transparent, especially so that residents can understand it better. Our last point is quality assurance. The Commission identified inconsistencies and limited cross-referencing within the current performers. So we recommend that the future budget documentation undergoes independent review by a third party not included in the budget setting process. This would enhance scrutiny efficiency and reduce the need for supplementary information requests. These observations aim to further strengthen the budget scrutiny process and improve the accessibility and comprehensiveness of financial documentation.
Recommendations?
I recommend that to develop an improvement framework for the development of pro formas in 2025-2026.
Thanks, Councillor Odim. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, I now move to Councillor Masters, item 6, budget consultation and engagement.
So the Budget Scrutiny Commission acknowledges the efforts made belatedly to initiate budget consultation this year and broaden resident engagement. However, we note significant concerns regarding the depth and breadth of stakeholder participation, particularly regarding residents and partner organisations. We express disappointment that our previous recommendation to develop a contemporary framework for consultation and engagement, moving beyond traditional co-production towards resident-centred design, has not been implemented during the past 12 months. Current limitations we've observed in the consultation process include insufficiently specific stakeholder engagement. The committee recommends establishing formal consultation mechanisms with public sector partners and developing structured dialogue with developers currently operating within the borough. 2, underutilisation of existing forums. It's particularly notable that the internationally recognised People-Powered Places forums, despite their acclaim for participatory budgeting, have not been utilised in the budget consultation process. This represents a missed opportunity to leverage established community engagement channels. To strengthen further consultation processes, we recommend developing a comprehensive stakeholder engagement strategy, establishing formal consultation protocols with public sector partners, integrating existing community forums for powered places into the budgetation process, and creating structured engagement opportunities with the development sector.
Thank you, Councillor Masters. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Item 7, Councillor Charter, the third sector partners.
Thank you, Chair. One of the noticeable omissions from this budget is the impact that it has on the third sector. By that, we mean the voluntary community, faith and social enterprise sector. This observation is particularly pertinent in light of recent findings from the peer review, where we were encouraged to strengthen our relationship with the sector. It is of considerable concern that there is no strategic framework in helping and in shaping the partnership with the third sector. And to this end, we would strongly recommend that the executive develops a comprehensive third sector engagement strategy, that we review the cumulative impact of the proposed cuts, and there are several of them that directly and indirectly impact on voluntary and community organisations, that we establish clear protocols for managing relationships with the sector, and that we create a structured approach to partnerships, development and sustainability with the sector. This would ensure and safeguard our relationships for the long term at a time when we desperately need the help of the voluntary sector.
Thank you, Councillor Charter. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
And now move on to item 8, and Councillor Charter again, optimism bias.
So one of the things that has come across quite clearly from a number of these pro formas is that we are living in uncertain times, but we would caution against optimism bias. A number of the proposals are contingent on the sale of properties, on the timing of new projects coming online. We, as a committee, have felt a lack of security and certainty around this, and therefore, you will hear later, there are a number of reservations around some of the proposals. The key areas of concern for us we can demonstrate several instances where critical actions are either deferred or to the end of the 3-year period or lack specific implementation dates. This, as I've said previously, creates a level of acute uncertainty for everyone involved. Evidence from the current operations, for example, Asset management sales. We know that we had an ambitious target last year of selling £16 million of assets that we weren't able to realise in full. The current volume and pace of officer decisions regarding property disposals is taking longer than expected. That we have extended timeframes for property transactions. And most recently, we saw this with the East Wing, where it's taken 5 years to find a tenant to be able to take ownership of that property. This has been attributed to a limited in-house expertise. We need to look at that properly. The other area that we're concerned about in terms of optimism bias is around programme management. We noticed that our consistent cost overruns on the affordable homes programme. We know that there are incomplete or inadequate detailed proposals in certain areas, especially related to property and the transformation. And we have extended implementation periods from initial projects. The absence of this information related to governance and transformation is particularly pronounced. So our recommendations are as follows: that the enhanced scrutiny So to address these concerns, it is recommended that scrutiny functions incorporate optimism bias assessment as a standing item in their budget review process. So going forward, officers are minded to actually critically look at whether they are unconsciously or consciously adopting an optimistic bias approach. This systematic approach will help us ensure more realistic planning and risk assessment in future budget cycles. This enhanced scrutiny should particularly focus on timeline feasibility for asset sales and major projects, resource availability for implementation, market conditions affecting property transactions, and capacity assessment for the delivery of proposed savings.
Thank you, Councillor Charter. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah, colleagues, this brings us to the end of the draft strategic and operational recommendation as related to budgeting approach, communication, and engagement. I will now move into more specific recommendation along the themes that we have considered, namely people, place, resource. I will start with the people-specific recommendations. And I call upon Councillor Charter to kick off this section of our recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the proposals is to cease activity in cease active centre activity, meaning the work that we do with communities around health and well-being. We're concerned about this. We didn't feel at the time that we scrutinised it, we got sufficient information. The information that we then subsequently asked for contradicted some of the original proposal. So on that basis, we feel we're unable to make a clear recommendation on this proposal. I think it is important to say on this proposal in particular, that if the council, if the executive did adopt an early intervention and prevention approach, this could be viewed and critically assessed in a much clearer way. Should I continue, Chair?
Yes.
In terms of increasing community centre income, which is A7. Now, this is a torturous process, I think. It speaks to the issue around the relationship with the voluntary sector, but it also is an issue around the council's understanding of social value. The audit committee of January, 15th of January this year, had a presentation on social value where officers were encouraged to go back and look at that document again. In not understanding what social value offers the sector, we feel that this proposal in particular failed to actually say what is lost by the voluntary sector not having access to community centres, and that's of a critical concern. The last proposal that I'll touch on for the moment is the increase income in town halls. And this is a classic example of how this budget pro formas are collated, but have an incoherent consistency across the piece. So in A8, we are told that there are plans to increase income, generate additional income from the town halls. Whilst we can completely and utterly understand the rationale behind that, we also find in a later proposal in B2 that one of the town halls may be sold. From a committee point of view, that does not give us sufficient evidence to make a recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Charter. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
I now move to A10, and A11. And if I take A11 first, which is Councillor Odu.
On the youth empowerment, there's a revised saving of 100,000. We do welcome the focus on early intervention and prevention for young people. However, we welcome further detail on the risk plan for this saving. And so therefore, there's insufficient information for us to be able to make a recommendation.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Now we have A10. I know that's children and young people. Services. Councillor Shaw, would you move that?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So it's A19.
No, sorry, A10. Would you
Sorry.
okay,
Yes, A10.
A10. Anyone who
Chair, I think, can I assist, councillor Shaw?
No, that's fine. I'm just looking because I got from A19 onwards. Yeah, I've got A10.
thank you.
So we're trying to reduce the enrichment budget. Scalable reduction of 25%. The recommendation is it's insufficient information to make a recommendation. A19.
Okay, I would call you for A19. So we go in a specific order. So if you have a respite now, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. And may we now move to Councillor Masters?
No, it's councillor Odio for A11.
No, that's been taken.
Oh, sorry.
So can we move to Councillor Masters now with the efficiencies?
So A13, reduction of staff for the council's volunteering service. Again, we felt this was something that needed to be part of the VCS review, given that in many other boroughs, the volunteer service is provided by the VCS. But we suggested a potential pause on this one, I think.
A16?
A16, grant maximisation and resources. We acknowledge the rationale behind this. And on paper, it's a great way forward, but just in line with our fears about optimism bias, we just recognise the level of risk in talking about grants without knowing the future of particular grant offers, but we acknowledge that. A17, promoting independence. We 100% support the approach, which is about supporting people to access the right care and support at the right time. So maximising their independence and also equally ensuring our services are value for money. So this is about sort of applying these services to particular groups of residents at the moment, but we hope to sort of roll it out across everyone in need of social care. Again, though, we felt we would have benefited from more information around the modelling. We were given a narrative to how these large levels of savings would be rolled out across the 3 years, but we didn't receive more information on the modelling in time to actually come forward with a more detailed recommendation than acknowledging this saving.
Good.
So let's say 17. Do you want me to go on to 18?
A18.
And A18 we felt was similar in terms of short-term technology and prevention. We did ask whether there were any specific innovations that were expected to come through in the next few years. And we heard that yet again, it was a story about rolling out a more general approach to efficiencies brought by new technology and levels of prevention. But again, as we didn't receive the modelling for this in time, all we can do is acknowledge the sentiments behind this particular saving.
Thank you, Councillor. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. And we now move to A19, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Development functions, adult and health directorate. We note the risk factor noted when we see medium and long-term reduction in savings. Therefore, we would recommend looking at the longer-term modelling of the risk factors.
And 820. And after that, it will be Councillor Shorter. That agree?
20, submit?
Yes.
Okay, so it's to further embedding of Newham circles of support model by joining together the assessment and safeguarding and intervention service. We would be eager to learn how thresholds for engagement would be modeled and the possible reduction in families in each category of support and assessment. We would recommend a full risk assessment on this. It's a recommendation.
Yeah. Thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, I now call upon Councillor Shorter to take us from 26.
A20,
26, yes, 26 to 28, and then that will be Thelma after. Thank you.
so A26 refers to a reduction in community grant allocations. An ongoing theme of this commission has been the impact of these cuts on the community, voluntary and faith sector. And again, a reduction in even very small grants to this sector has a disproportionate effect on the outputs that can benefit residents. So for this reason, and if I wasn't clear for the record, for A7 as well, the same recommendation is to pause the proposal in line with an urgent review of the council's relationship with the voluntary and community sector, and at the same time to also address the issue of social value. That's the recommendation, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, I call on Councillor Odio.
A29 for Newham Living. So Newham Living is a new approach to supported accommodation where the council own, lease or have influence over buildings. This influence is used to achieve high quality schemes which have been put in. The savings are achieved through commissioning at scale and achieving a lower unit cost, a focus on outcomes and supporting residents to achieve independence through step down and optimizing housing benefit income for housing related costs, and we acknowledge this. Also on A30 is about having a specialist foster care scheme so that we're moving children from residential to specialist carers. We acknowledge this, although we thought that we need further information. The proposal is dependent on
Thank you.
Chair, may I just go back to A27 and A28? I think in my haste I omitted those.
Okay.
We note that there are proposals to increase the overhead costs or calculate higher overhead costs in grant applications from the Climate Action Team. While that's applaudable, it does beg the question, why was this not done before? That's a basic principle of full cost recovery in applying for grants. So we acknowledge that. In the similar vein, we acknowledge that there is going to have to be a reduced subsidy for the dockside diner.
Okay, thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
I now move to Councillor Shaw to take us from A31 to A37.
A31 is to review the questions of intervention to adolescents. And in recognizing the high cost to families, communities and services, as well as the cost to public services, we believe supplements is altered and it's needed. Therefore, we agree, the recommendation is to agree. A32 is supporting parents of under 1-year-olds. We would suggest posing this in line with the proposed outcomes of the government's child poverty strategy. Suggest posing this pending the outcomes of the government's child poverty task group. So that's the recommendation. A33 is the house project, promote independence for care leavers. And the recommendation is to agree this. And A37 is streamline and reduce return home interview service by 50%. We would like further details on the level of risk involved in this because of insufficient evidence to form, there's insufficient evidence to form a recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor, and may I ask you to consider B24 and C6, but I give you some respite there.
Sorry,
I don't,
it's me, is it?
yes, they're all children.
On placement or the
Yes,
same one?
yes, in the same place.
Place.
People.
People?
Yes, if you look at, it's children at B24 and C6 on the same pro forma that we have. We could come back to that. I asked Councillor Killian to come in, otherwise, you come to that.
So I'm gonna look at B21 here, which is ceasing the funding for the voluntary community and faith sector infrastructure and capacity building. While this is some years hence, but given the Commission has just activated 2 years late, we believe that the opportunity should be taken and considered in long-term future development of the capacity building and representation locally. We recommend pause pending a review of the council's relationship with the voluntary sector on B21. When it comes to B22, notwithstanding the claims of international acclaim for the work of people power places, we believe this cannot be a priority for the council going forward. And we're disappointed to find that as discretionary spending, this is continuing for another year. So we acknowledge the review of People Power Places programme, and we recommend ceasing it with immediate effect and definitely for 2025-26.
We also have missed B15 library review. Do you want me to?
Yes, please. Yes, Councillor.
So we don't really understand why the review of library provision is taking so long. We believe these savings could be brought forward far earlier. So we think that the review should be brought forward, basically.
Thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
And Councillor Shaw would finish us off with B24 and C6.
And 23.
B24, yeah?
23.
The three
Yeah.
and C6.
So B23 is family group conference saving. And we've noted the feedback from the corporate director that this may be subject to change as a result of government legislation. Therefore, the recommendation is to agree. B24 is facing in a reduction in the total number of social workers. We haven't seen a pro forma for this, so we don't know the actual information. Therefore, the recommendation is to disagree. Is C6 here as well?
Yes.
So C6 is evolution of youth empowerment service. And the recommendation is, we suggest that the council post its facts subject to its review of the sector. If it is to be progressed, we recommend monthly updates coming to Scrutiny Commission for discussions.
Thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
And this brings us to the end. People go on to play. I think it's necessary for me to offer some clarification or explanation, because especially for members of the public, they would air us prefixing the numbers with either A, B, or C. And so I would just offer some explanation. Where we are prefixing with an A, what they simply mean is that these are savings that the cabinet has already decided to implement in the year 2025-26. And the latest position is that these will total 20 million in 2025-26 and 60 million across the 3 years MTFS period. Where it's prefixed with a B, the savings are those options requiring further development before inclusion in the budget setting, and is now proposed to include 11 million before inclusion in the budget setting, and is now proposed to include 11 million of these in the 2025-26 budget and 15 million across the MTFS period. And where it's prefixed with a C, these savings are new savings option, and these total 2 million in the draft 2025-26 budget and 4 million across the MTFS. And that's the end of my explanation to what the prefix means. Thank you. I now move us on to place, and the Councillor Hudson will deal with the first 3 items, A4, A5, A12.
Thank you very much, Chair. On A4, to advertise the income target. Again, this is a case of optimism bias. Effectively, the income budget is being increased by 136%. It's the procurement process. We don't know when the procurement process is going to be successful, if it's going to be delayed, and this is a classic case of optimism bias. On A5, so there's an element, I support generating extra income with an element of great uncertainty. On the A5 Park Sports Pitch review, there's an issue about EQIAs being applied to this. I was at a meeting with the Friends of Central Park a couple of weeks ago, and they had not been consulted about any type of closing of the park's goals. So again, an element of uncertainty. And we now come to A12, which is my favourite one, a very small amount of money, but this is the reduce the subsidy of the free pest control service, which is currently funded through the general fund. And the idea is that part of it should be funded through the housing revenue account. So you've got this bizarre situation that if you live in your own house, you pay your council tax and your pest control for rats is absolutely free. But if you live in a council block, you pay your council tax and you pay your rent to pay for the pest control. This is clearly inequitable, and I would like this to be reviewed.
Thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Well, we now move on to B5 and B6, and that is Councillor Keeling. And just to put you on notice, A22, 23, and 24 is Councillor Charter.
So when we're coming to B5, it's the review of the events, culture and heritage budgets. And we were very much persuaded by Councillor Amaverdi's comments that communities should be encouraged to undertake the activity themselves and giving the communities that empowerment to do so. So with that, we actually recommend reducing the budget by a further 50% to allow for 2 staff members event pump priming costs. When it comes to B6, which is a review of heritage archive and local studies resourcing, future year should look at reduction of all the spending, and further savings should be explored under this category.
Yeah, thank you. Are those agreed? Councillor Charter.
So the next series are a series of savings to be made that are in a sense, back office as savings, which we acknowledge. So A22 is a restructure of the licensing and registration service. We understand why that's necessary. Grant maximisation and service efficiencies. We note that this is one of those, again, where there could be a level of optimism bias, and also begs the question, why were we not doing this previously? Again, we have no basis for understanding the amount or how it's arrived at. So again, we can only simply acknowledge this. We note that the planning team have various levels of efficiencies that they can offer up. And again, that's acknowledged.
Thank you.
Agreed.
I would just put Councillor Shaw on notice for the 13, 14, and then Councillor Phelan. I would be taking A34. Colleagues would remember that Victoria Street was subject to a call-in. It was proposed by the executive to demolish 10 Victoria Street and to rebuild with housing. At the time, Review and Scrutiny called in this decision and recommend that it's reviewed. What the executive came up with is to use Victoria Street for a Newham living model. And so therefore 110 units is utilized of the 216 units for this. We welcome the executive approach, and it's for 3 years with a possible extension of 1 year if needed. And I know this committee would welcome that this be a permanent arrangement. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
And I would do also A38, and that is the Parks and Green Spaces Budget Review. It's proposed that there is a 10% reduction of the parks budget. Action to achieve the green flag growth, revoked 39,000. Review 4 strategic parks, operative post, and Newham Nature Reserve Development Officer posts. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
I have area Councillor Hudson again, which it's B7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But if you do need some respite,
That was me.
Yes,
Councillor Keeling.
okay. Sorry, Councillor Killian. It's a big chunk. It's a big,
I can do them as a collective.
big chunk, Danny. So if you need some respite, just look at it.
So I'm going to be looking at surcharges and emission-based charging here. So I'm looking at B7 diesel surcharges of resident permits of £50 per year. B8, a diesel surcharge for business and industrial permits of £100 per year. B9, diesel surcharge on a short stay parking on street of £1 per hour. B10, emission-based charging of price profiling short stay parking. And B11, emission-based charging, price profiling, visitor permits. Okay, so when looking at these and looking at the comparisons that have been done against other boroughs, we see inconsistency in the data and how other boroughs are doing these charges in a way that is being briefed to us by officers and by the cabinet. So with that in mind, we're going to say that there's insufficient evidence for us to make a recommendation on this item. But we do recommend, if this were to go ahead, that very good communication and possibly a consultation with residents is done so that they understand not only the policy, but why we're doing it and how it will benefit the local community too. And the last one I'm going to do here is B12, which is a healthy school street expansion income. We're all in agreement here that healthy school streets are a great thing, but we would question the modelling that leads to such income and suggest a possible element of optimism bias here. We acknowledge this, this policy, but we believe the income level must be reviewed regularly and reported back.
Thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Councillor Shaw, and I then put you on notice, Councillor Keeling, you would be next from B17 to, I think, the rest of it.
Yep, that's fine.
Do we need to extend standing orders?
No, not until 9:30.
Okay, fine.
So, Councillor Shaw and then Councillor Keeling.
Thank you, Chair. So B13 is to redesign and reconfigure children's centres provision in the borough to achieve budget reductions of between 33% and 75%. We would ask for further details of the residents' consultation before coming to a decision on the matter. We appreciate the timeline being offered for the review and would suggest that as a model of good practice, similar approach should be undertaken with libraries. And it's insufficient information to make a decision. B14 is to redesign commissioned youth offer. We haven't seen adequate information and therefore it is insufficient.
Thank you very much. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Councillor Keeling.
So I'm looking now at B17, which is an IEH asset maximisation. We acknowledge this policy and we agree. B18 is to cease PRS projects team activity. This very large budget amount here. We note the proposals by government to get Britain working and suggestions that local areas be responsible for skills growth and training. We suggest that as a result, this is a timely moment to pause this service, and we absolutely acknowledge this proposal. B19 is to review energy efficiency and empty homes team. The proposal to cut from one funding stream and apply as a growth bid elsewhere seems to be at odds with the overall objective and would imply uncertainty over the level of actual savings. So for that reason, we have insufficient evidence to make a recommendation on B19. Now, when it comes to B20, this is a very contentious item. And in actual fact, in the last 12 months, there was even a statement put out by the Mayor herself on the brilliant work that our Newham Money Service does and the amount of hardship funding that we actually give to our residents because of the cost of living crisis at the moment. With the amount of cuts, increased charging and possible council tax rise of 10%, we disagree with this policy. We believe that it needs to stay in-house, maximising referral opportunities. It would be a loss to our residents and the support that they require in uncertain times. C7, target savings from a review of neighbourhood community levies. So we acknowledge this policy. And lastly, we have recommendations of cutting people power places with immediate effect, which has already been covered previously. It's to pause the spending immediately for the project and wind down existing interventions. We suggest reviewing PPP as part of the council's wider engagement strategy with residents and the relationships with the volunteer sector. And lastly, we have a recommendation on the Royal Docks Bridge. Following on from a scrutiny call in 2024, we would encourage the Mayor to reconsider the council's contribution to the Royal Docks Bridge and cease the Newham contribution to the bridge in entirety.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, this brings us, sorry, first of all, are those agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, and now this brings us to the end of the specific recommendation as pertain to place. We now move into the specific recommendation regarding this, and Councillor Carter, I put you on notice for A1, B1, B2.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we now move to resource recommendations. Councillor Charter.
Thank you, Chair. I must say, through this process, I've learned a great deal about property management, and it's with that mindset that I'm sharing these reflections. So when it comes to the sale of Debden Centre, to raise the capital asset, the capital that we need as a borough, I think there is a real issue that when we were hearing the evidence, we were told that there had been, for a number of years, challenges with finding a long-term sustainable solution for a Debden House, and that's appreciated. However, it was suggested that this was due to an inaction on the part of officers. We would point out that in 2020, there was a report commissioned by Lambert Smith, which did say that actually there was viable options that, if they had been taken at that time, could have actually engineered a higher yield, because we could have sold the property at a higher cost. This is a challenge that if activities aren't being taken up on time and work isn't being completed on time, we have a real challenge. It's unfortunate, but we also note that only 18% of campsite users last year at Debden were actually Newham residents as well. So we acknowledge the proposal, but we have real concerns about how we ended up here. And I think this speaks to a wider issue about the management both of activities after the budget setting process and how we rationale on that. On B1, which is about rationalisation of the voluntary and community sector, I'll refer you to this has a crossover synergy with the community centres. And again, we have a situation where there is a proposal to reduce the subsidy to the voluntary sector of cost of cheaper accommodation. Now, many of these organisations are struggling hand to mouth as well. Incurring a major expenditure on capital is going to be a real challenge. It's a loss to Newham. We have to understand this in slightly different terms. The pro forma mentioned no mention of what the social value and the cost to the borough would be if these organisations weren't able to deliver. And again, by the council's own admission on this pro forma, they've said in the pro forma it's incomplete. We heard that at the audit committee by the Director of Property Services. We would suggest pausing this work subject to a wider review. And Chair, the last one on this one is the relocation of dockside and disposal of other operational assets, such as the Stratford Town Hall. Now, whilst we acknowledge the need to raise capital by the sale of properties, again, we are concerned that this has crossover where in some cases other pro formas have suggested you could raise money from these properties by letting them as well. And that causes huge uncertainty for this committee in trying to understand what the bottom line of this budget actually is. So for that reason, we can simply acknowledge this. We cannot do no further.
Okay, may I ask you to do B3? Master for A and Councillor Odu, which is A21 up to A40. Just put you on notice.
Chair, we acknowledge that some of the councils that have had the worst financial problems and have been forced into a section 114 have been those that have invested in commercial ventures. So for that reason, we acknowledge the need to have a sale of investment properties on B3.
Thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
And Councillor Masters, A14, A15, please.
A14 concerns the end of the provision of celebration lights and street decorations. Again, I refer to the evidence provided by Councillor Amaverdi, who championed the idea of festive and religious celebration. We would suggest retaining this focus. This is not something that can be delegated to communities of residents, though, as it requires technical support from council departments for which we have a legal responsibility, such as highways. It's a nominal sum in the grand scale of things, and we know this is something that means a great deal to our residents. So we actively disagree with this provision.
Thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, and we move to A21 to A40, and then Councillor Hudson, A41, B4, and then, so Councillor Odu.
Reduction, and we acknowledge this. A25 is about the representation of the local contract and also the spend reduction. We also acknowledge this as well. A35 is about pausing the production of the new magazine for 2024 to 2025, and we acknowledge this. And A36 is about ceasing the provision of free tea and coffee at Dockside and stop any catering for internal meetings, and we also acknowledge this as well.
Okay, 39. No, sorry, that's it. Thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Councillor Hudson, it's 839, 40. On and
A39 and A40 are the information programme, and we're talking about over the medium-term budget. We're talking about £23 million worth of budget savings, but in the agenda document which went through the cabinet, there are no pro formas to actually say how it's made up. I understand that at a previous private meeting, there may be some papers, but in these public papers, I don't think there's anything in there for A39 and A40. I think we do need more evidence, and we do have reservations about the effectiveness of this program. A41 is a reduction in the number of IT staff, and some of these IT staff may be working with the transformation program. So I'm just trying to get my mind around how we're going to get £23 million worth of savings if we are seeing the number of IT staff. But again, we've got reservations and we need further information about this. On the council tax reduction, the point on this is really about the poor council tax collection rates by the London Borough of Newham. If members of the public spare hours, they can look up the collection rates and receipt of council tax and non-domestic rates, local forces data, which is sent through to the Department of Local Government. And looking at those tables, you can see that Newham in-year council tax collection rates compared with outer London boroughs in 23-24, 89.4% collection compared to outer London of 96%. I think the point that I'm making is that the more money that you can collect is the more services that you can have. And if we can invest in the collection of in-year council tax, it could mitigate against reducing the council reduction support scheme to residents.
Thank you. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Councillor Odo, B16.
B16. So the Tackling Racism, Inequality and Disproportionality Programme. So this is something that we were actually praised for. It was recognised in the peer review. So we did really well on that. So we'd like to say that. And what the proposal is saying is that it's a review and to mainstream the council's operations. Equality works will be devolved to individual services, and there'll be a new head of equalities role. Into the council, and it will be a budget.
Thank you. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
And we would end this section with Councillor Keeling, which would be C1, 3, 4, and 5.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'm looking at transformation team costs here, new potential savings or change to the above savings. Now, throughout this budget setting process, we have found that we either were given insufficient data or not enough reasoning or background papers or information for us to make these recommendations. So on C1, C2 and C3, we cannot make a recommendation because we have insufficient evidence. We acknowledge that there are concepts of plans here, but we just do not have the full plans. When it comes to C4, we have an ICT contract renegotiation and procurement. We acknowledge this idea as a new potential saving. And lastly, C5, which is another new potential saving or change to the above, a centralisation and consolidation of marketing, communications and policy spending from across the council. We acknowledge this policy idea and I will end there for resources.
Thank you. And this brings us to the end of the specific recommendation in respect of resource. Councillor Masters.
I think we're missing one. One idea that the committee thought of to generate additional revenue was looking into the possibility of applying a hotel tax, which could sort of generate extra resource given the growth in our cultural sector.
Thank you, Councillor Master. What does members think about that as a recommendation?
I think we should explore all options and I would endorse that idea.
Yes.
Okay, so members agree to explore all options. That's carried? Thank you. So overall, colleagues, this brings us to the end of the specific recommendations in respect of people, place, and resource. Thank you for your work in this area and your participation in this segment of the recommendations. I now move just to update recommendations with item 6. Last year, the majority of our recommendations, in fact, all but one of our recommendations were accepted. And with the exception of the recommendation concerning members' allowance, we will be seeking an update on the implementation and the progress of these recommendations from last year. And we would include it in our final report this year. I now move to item 7, and that's the closing of the meeting. Is there any comments from anyone before I bring this meeting to a close? Councillor Keeling.
I'd just like to commend the scrutiny officers for their help and assistance throughout the whole of this budget working process.
Yeah. That noted?
Noted. And Chair, can we pass on our thanks to Stuart, who has also assisted us for
Yes.
PricewaterhouseCoopers?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. Thank you. And can I say a big thank you to all of you for the work that you've put in, patient participating in this process. Our work is not finished. This is just basically the start of finalizing the recommendations that we've just agreed to. And so can I ask for delegated authority to work with officers and the members, especially the chairs, to finesse these recommendations ready for you on the 10th of February, where we'll be formally adopting overview and scrutiny committee will be formally presented with these recommendations and our report, and be given an opportunity to formally endorse before it makes its way to cabinet and then to council. So thank you all very much indeed, and the meeting.
Chair, we do, I propose that we grant you that delegated
Yes.
authority.
Yes.
Agreed.
Great.
I thank you. I take it as read, didn't I?
I resume, Chair.
Yes. And we have made good time. It's now 10 minutes past, 12 minutes past 9. Thank you all for your efficiencies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay.